History is a very touchy subject, especially in the United States. With the level of censorship being imposed on the subject of history and the way it is taught in our schools, many young minds have been grossly misinformed about the true history of our nation and the world at large. In this video, we will take you through 50 photos that are not appropriate for history books, as we attempt to re-educate the public on the true events of our past. Number 50. Runaway Slave Peter. The horrific days of the slave trade may be way past us, but there are images like this that remind us of one of the darkest eras in human history. Peter, the African-American slave pictured here with serious scars on his back, had endured a severe whipping from his master for undisclosed reasons. The intense punishment left him bedridden for 2 months, but thankfully, he was able to escape the 3,000-acre plantation belonging to John and Bridget Lyons in 1863. Although historians would rather not talk about slavery anymore, the truth is it remains a blot on the history of all the nations that participated in the abominable act. Number 49. The human zoos of the early 20th century. Back in the early 20th century, someone thought it would be a good idea to put other humans from indigenous tribes on display for people to pay and watch. Thus, the idea of the human zoo was born. In 1904, the United States government imported 1,300 indigenous Filipinos from different tribes for this demeaning purpose. This picture taken at the Coney Island Zoo in 1904 features these tribesmen forced to reenact their traditional lifestyles to the amazement of the crowd. Then, of course, there's also the unforgettable Filipino zoo girl picture, which captures a little girl bound by ropes and surrounded by the zoo visitors. Also taken in 1904, the unidentified girl was displayed as a zoo attraction among the monkeys and lizards in the most degrading display of human depravity. These pictures are often left out of mainstream history, which chooses to propagate a romanticized image of the events of the past. Number 48. Patient being treated for mental illness. Mental health treatment and awareness has come a long way. Today, people are more informed about their mental state and the appropriate treatments for the various conditions that have been identified. But back in the 19th century, things weren't so ideal. For example, take a look at this image of a patient being treated for mental illness, taken in Germany in 1890. We don't really know who thought this was the appropriate way to treat a medical condition, and quite frankly, we doubt it ever worked. Number 47. Holocaust wedding rings. Towards the end of World War II, U.S. troops took over the Buchenwald concentration camp as Germany edged closer and closer to its historic defeat. When the U.S. soldiers explored the area, they found watches, precious stones, eyeglasses, gold fillings, and of course, wedding rings belonging to those who had lost their lives in the death camp. This picture showing thousands of wedding rings collected at the camp was taken on May 5, 1945, and it remains one of the most unforgettable pointers to the large-scale death and mayhem that resulted from World War II. Number 46. The strange case of Blanche Monnier. Very few have heard the tales of Blanche Monnier, the beautiful damsel whose immense physical appeal eventually became her undoing. Before tragedy befell Monnier, she was one of the most gorgeous women in the area at the time. This was before her aristocratic mother and brother locked her away from the rest of the world for 26 years. Nobody knows what exactly prompted this wicked action, but when Monnier was eventually found, she had become a shadow of her former beauty. She had emaciated significantly, and according to officials, the middle-aged lady had not seen sunlight since her captivity. Number 45. World War II gas masks for babies. The Second World War saw some of the most pronounced displays of human cruelty in history. One of the greatest examples was the growing threat of chemical weapons and gas attacks, which dealt untold horrors on both civilians and military personnel alike. Due to the fear of an impending gas attack, civilians, including babies, were required to wear a gas mask to protect them in the case of an unexpected event. This picture, taken in 1940, captures nurses testing out the new gas masks that were specifically designed for babies. Pictures like these remind us of our turbulent past and the far-reaching consequences of armed conflicts. Number 44. Ebensee concentration camp. The Jewish Holocaust remains a poignant reminder of how deep-seated hate can ravage the world. Perhaps very few pictures taken throughout the course of the war that saw to the death of millions of Jews can rival this one. Taken at the Ebensee concentration camp in 1945. These men have been confined in the worst of conditions since their capture, and finally, they found freedom. The harsh treatment they had endured at the hands of Nazi Germany is evident in their frail frame and skinny bodies. Number 43. Swedish gay couple. Over the years, countries nationwide have become more forward-thinking, and the level of support and tolerance for homosexual couples has increased significantly in recent times. But back in the day, things weren't so rosy. This mugshot, taken in Sweden in 1897, captures two men who were sent to prison for engaging in a homosexual relationship. Today, Sweden has transformed into one of the most progressive nations in Europe as regards the rights of the LGBTQ+ community, marking a significant paradigm shift in the ideologies that ruled the nation. Number 42. Unknown man bearing a cryptic sign during the Depression. If you're familiar with American history, you know that the days of the Depression were one of the most terrible times in the nation. Jobs were scarce, things were crazy expensive, and people were desperate for even the most basic things. One picture that bears testimony to the extent of the situation features a young man bearing a sign as he seeks for help from anyone and everyone willing to lend a helping hand to ensure the survival of his family. It reminds us of the dark days behind us and how far we have come from those horrible times. Number 41. Coal miners in Belgium. After a day of work. The late 18th century and the early 19th century weren't the best of times, especially for the common man. Most people in Europe had to descend to the lowest point, acquiring jobs that posed the risk of death just so they could survive. This infamous picture was taken in a coal mine in Belgium back in the year 1900, and it captured the extremely unsafe conditions that some of these miners were forced to work in. Sadly, this same level of treatment continues to be meted out in several countries around the world till today, reminding us that we still have a very long way to go as a society. Number 40. First picture taken after the Chernobyl disaster. April 26, 1986 is a date that will remain forever etched in the history books as one of the most catastrophic dates in the history of Ukraine and perhaps the entire world. The Chernobyl nuclear meltdown and explosion remain a pivotal point in our history, and the impacts continue to rock our world today. This picture is said to be the earliest known photograph taken just right after the incident, and it showcases the level of destruction that pervaded the area. The photograph was taken by Igor Kostin, a photographer from Kiev, and of all the pictures he took that day, this was the only one that didn't get destroyed by radiation. Number 39. The Caribbean Slaves' Bible. The controversial use of religion as a tool for oppression and discrimination has been a subject of debate for hundreds of years. Back in the days of the slave trade, a special version of the Bible was written for Caribbean slaves. The book was carefully edited to remove any references to freedom, so as to send a very specific message to the slaves that it was God's will that they be subservient to their fellow humans. Today, our world continues to grapple with this same undying challenge as religious manipulations continue to hamper the progress of our society as a whole. Number 38. Moments before the Omagh bombing. This eerie picture was taken just moments before the 1998 Omagh bombing that caused the death of 29 individuals, leaving countless injured. But what's so creepy about this particular picture is the fact that the said bomb was contained in the red Vauxhall Cavalier captured here. Thankfully, the man and child in the picture survived the incident. Number 37. Picture from the Korean War. There are certain parts of history that are gradually being edited from the curriculum because they tell of the horrific deeds of many of the most powerful nations in the world today. If historians could, they would totally erase events like the Korean War from all history books. But even though the world has a selective memory, pictures like this one remind us that the war was very real and significantly altered the course of lives of so many people. The man captured here was said to have been an ambulance driver from the Indian Army. The picture captures him as he tries to cope with the intense pain after his legs get blown off. Number 36. Nazi Rally, Madison Square Garden, 1939. Back in 1939, the infamous Nazi rally organized by the German-American Bund took place at Madison Square Garden. Over 20,000 people attended the event, with Fritz Julius Kuhn as a featured speaker. The infamous rally took place just 2 days before George Washington's birthday, and this image captured at the event showcases the massive attendance recorded, as well as the huge portrait of Washington that was placed on the stage. Number 35. The mushroom cloud over Nagasaki, Japan. On August 6, 1945, American forces dropped the atomic bomb Little Boy over the city of Nagasaki, Japan. The resulting explosion led to the death of over 140,000 people, marking a significant moment in the history of warfare. This historic image captures the mushroom cloud rising over the city as countless people take their last breaths and critical infrastructure gets decimated. Today, history would like to forget this chapter, but pictures like these remind us of the unforgettable episode. Number 34. The Ghost of Hiroshima. This iconic image, taken just moments after the United States dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima, remains a poignant reminder of the horrors of war. According to eyewitnesses, a man was said to have been sitting at this exact spot in front of Sumitomo Bank Company in Hiroshima, waiting for the bank to open when the bomb dropped. The force of the explosion was said to have led to an instant disintegration, leaving only a ghostly shadow forever etched onto the concrete steps. Number 33. The Ku Klux Parade, 1925. On August 8, 1926, 30,000 white supremacists dressed in Ku Klux Klan robes paraded down Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington. This picture has forever immortalized this controversial point in the history of the United States. Why the government allowed such a hate fuel campaign to take place remains a mystery, but considering the level of racial segregation that was allowed at the time, it's hard to really imagine the government of the day raising any red flags about such an event. Number 32. Dorothy Count's first day at school. September 4, 1957 is a date that will remain forever etched in the history of the civil rights movement. On this day, 15-year-old Dorothy Counts imprinted her name in the sands of time when she became the first black student to attend an all-white school. This picture captures this historic moment as she walked proudly, oblivious to the mockery and teasing she received from the white male students. Although history would have us believe that the dark days of blatant racism were ages ago, images like these remind us that in reality, these days aren't really that far behind us. Number 31. 1,000 dog tags. Check out this iconic image of 58,307 United States soldiers killed during the course of the Vietnam War. This monumental piece was taken at the Harold Washington Library Center in Chicago, and it remains one of the most accurate representations of the horrors of the Vietnam War. Each tag represents a life brazenly cut short, victims of a senseless violence that unfortunately still continues around the world today. Number 30. 2 Armenian fighters getting ready for war. This picture was taken in 1915, and it features 2 Armenian counter-militias as they headed out to war. The iconic photograph was taken during the infamous Armenian genocide, and it serves as a portal to this horrific moment in our past, reminding us that humanity must always come first in any future conflict. Number 29. Anne Frank's father. One of the most famous stories arising from World War II was that of Anne Frank and her family. While hiding under an attic in Amsterdam, Anne documented her story in a diary which has since gained international attention. This picture features Otto Frank, Anne's father, as he returns to the attic where he and his family hid from the Nazis. Unfortunately, he was the only one who made it out of the war alive. Number 28. The Supreme Court, in session. Many people don't know this, but cameras are not allowed in the United States Supreme Court while it is in session. But in 1937, a woman managed to conceal a camera in her handbag, and she captured this iconic image of the Supreme Court proceedings. As far as we know, this is one of the only 2 photographs that have ever been taken when the court was in session. Number 27. George Willig the Human Fly. If you're scared of heights, you might want to look away from this one. In 1977, mountain climber George Willig successfully scaled the exterior of the World Trade Center's South Tower, in one of the most daring feats the world has ever seen. The climb was said to have taken 3.5 hours, resulting in his arrest as well as a $1 fine. Number 26. Nikola Tesla's last picture. Nikola Tesla remains one of the brightest minds to ever walk this earth, although his ideas were far from conventional. This desire to be an outlier pitched him against the scientific community many times, and continually frustrated his efforts to bring his ideas to fruition. Regardless, he continued to forge his own path, and made his mark with his brilliant inventions. This photograph, captured in 1943, is the last photograph of the scientist before his death. Number 25. Oldest aerial photograph. Aerial photographs are a marvel to behold. They offer us a glimpse of what the birds see as they fly by, giving us a new perspective on our surroundings. This historical image was taken by a balloonist in October 1860, and it captures an aerial view of Boston, Massachusetts. Today, the image is recognized as the oldest aerial photograph ever taken. Number 24. inside an old airplane. If there's anything we learn by studying the history of technological advancements, especially in the field of mobility, it's that the safety standards were extremely low. Just take a look at the inside of this commercial airplane from the 1930s. Surely, no one in their right minds would board this death trap. Thankfully, aviation laws have advanced significantly since then, but we can't help but wonder what it would feel like to soar through the skies on the very edge of danger. Number 23. John F. Kennedy's funeral. Have you ever wondered why there are so many pictures of President Kennedy's assassination, but very few from his funeral? Well, here's an iconic one from the event, capturing the glorious moment when one of the most controversial presidents the United States had ever seen was finally laid to rest. Number 22. The alligator table. Back in the 1920s, a bizarre establishment known as the California Alligator Farm in Los Angeles opened its door to guests who would dare to feast among the alligators. This picture captures the spine-chilling moments as a couple of ladies dine among the well-trained alligators. We really doubt this idea would sell today, but hey, sometimes the exhilaration that comes with living on the edge is worth it. Number 21. The pre-battle ritual of the London Scottish Regiment. This next one is quite unusual. During the First World War, soldiers from the London Scottish Regiment would throw themselves in the air right before heading to the battlefield. Unsure about the possibility of ever making it back, these soldiers would relish these last moments of bliss, which was the last for most of them. This image was captured in England 1915, and it reminds us that even in the midst of turbulence, humans will dig through the earth to find joy. Number 20. The World Trade Center during construction. This photograph, captured in 1972, shows the twin towers of the World Trade Center as the sun shines through its incomplete frame. You will agree that this photograph is short of spectacular, and it perfectly captures the serenity and bliss that masked the turbulence in the city below. Number 19. The first ever gay pride rally. Today, many countries in the world allow for freedom of expression, especially for the members of the LGBTQ+ community. But back in the days, it took the effort of a couple of brave men and women to earn this freedom. Back in 1972, the community shook a middle finger to their haters as they marched through the streets of Philadelphia in what is now known as the first ever gay pride rally. Number 18. Execution of a German communist. This next image depicts a German communist being executed by firing squad in Munibun, 1919. While we aren't sure whether it's real or fake, the image still stands as a reminder of this dark age in our history and the need to defend the unity of our world in order to avoid any other conflict of such proportions. Number 17. The Red Cross fundraiser, 1918. The First World War threw the world into serious devastation, but at the forefront of this conflict were medical personnel who ensured that all the military forces were well taken care of. In 1918, the Red Cross organized a fundraiser to raise money for the medical outreach organization in Birmingham, Alabama, so they would be able to continue their efforts in saving the lives of as many soldiers as possible. This photograph captures the nurses and officers who took part in the event. Number 16. An unusual pet. You've seen carriages being pulled by horses, camels, and even elephants. But have you ever seen a carriage being pulled by an alligator? Well, now you have. This picture was captured in 1987, and it features an alligator as it trudges along the road, pulling along a little girl sitting in a carriage. We're pretty sure today's safety regulations won't allow such a thing. Number 15. Princess Diana with an AIDS patient. This picture of Princess Diana remains one of the most iconic photographs ever taken of the British royal. At a time when mass hysteria about HIV and AIDS pervaded the society, Diana can be seen shaking hands with an AIDS patient without wearing a glove. This moment marked a significant shift in the world's understanding of the disease and the stigma that was associated with people suffering from it. Number 14. Banned Hitler photo. Here's a picture of Adolf Hitler you've probably never seen before. Nobody can really tell when the photograph was taken, but it is said that Hitler didn't like how it came out, so he ordered it to never be made public. However, it still managed to resurface, and here it is on the internet. Number 13. Queen Elizabeth as a mechanic. Most of us are accustomed to seeing Queen Elizabeth clad in royal robes, but did you know that during World War II, the Queen served as a mechanic? This photo remains one of the very few pictures reminiscent of that era. Number 12. A sea of shells. This next photograph captures the scale of the offensive that was launched against Germany during the Second World War. This significant pile of 105mm shells was left over after just a single day of Allied bombardment, and the vast amount is quite astounding. Number 11. The McDonald Brothers. In 1948, Richard and Maurice McDonald redesigned their San Bernardino restaurant to focus on a reduced menu, consisting of just 9 items. This was the birth of the McDonald's we all know and love today. The two brothers are photographed here as they pose in front of their newly rebuilt restaurant prior to the official opening. Number 10. Horrors of war. Sometimes the horrific events of war are most accurately captured through the eyes of the soldiers who fought tirelessly on the battlefields. On his way to war, Soviet soldier Eugen Stepanoich Kobatov was photographed, his eyes full of gleam and fervor. But on his way back after the war ended in 1945, the gleam in his eyes had vanished, and his demeanor was in semblance of a man who had seen the worst any man could ever see. Number 9. Last words. This cryptic scene from World War I captures the moment a Red Cross nurse writes down the last words of a soldier who had been mortally wounded. Scenes like these remind us of the true horrors of war and the irreversible consequences many families still continue to grapple with today. Number 8. Ann Arbor, 1996. This historic picture delivers a very powerful message, one that continues to resonate with our society till today. Taken in 1996, the image captures human rights activist Keisha Thomas as she tries to protect an alleged Ku Klux Klan supporter from a mob in Ann Arbor back in 1996. The scene captures the very essence of human empathy, reminding us that deep down, we're all just human. Number 7. Drag soldiers. While they were in the middle of rehearsals for a drag show in 1940, British soldiers were interrupted by a German raid. With no time to change to appropriate clothing, the men mounted their battle stations, still clad in their drag dresses. This photograph was captured at Shornmead Fort in England. Number 6. San Francisco's Cliff House. Very few people remember this iconic cliff house perched on the headland above the cliffs just north of Ocean Beach, or at least what it used to look like. This photograph remains one of the very few images that reminds us of its former glory. The picture was taken in 1907, and shortly after, the building burned down to the ground. Before we go on with more fascinating historical pictures, check out our subscribers pick for today. Today's topic revolves around this historic image of an unidentified Native American woman. Since this image was made public, many people have been left wondering who exactly this mysterious woman is. Her identity and backstory has attracted several speculations, while many are quick to point out the uncanny resemblance she bears with modern popular figures. Share your thoughts on this image with us in the comments. Number 5. Liberty, at last. On January 25, 1945, the Auschwitz death camp located in occupied Poland was liberated by the Red Army. Before the invasion, over 1 million Jews had lost their lives at this camp, making it one of the most prolific execution sites of the war. This photograph captures the joy and excitement on the faces of some of the newly liberated prisoners. Number 4. Boy watches TV for the first time. Today, we often take many technological innovations for granted, due to the fact that they are now quite commonplace. But back in the day, owning an advanced gadget like the television was a luxury not everybody could afford. This photograph, taken in 1948, captured the moment a young boy stares at a television screen for the first time. You just can't help but admire the look of wonder and awe on his face. Number 3. The fight for women's rights. More than ever since the history of the world, the subject of women's rights has become a major topic of consideration. But this wasn't the case back in the day. This picture of Annette Kellerman was taken in 1907 as a form of protest against the unreasonable laws which prevented women from wearing fitted one-piece bathing suits. She was subsequently arrested for indecency. Number 2. The Night Witches. The Second World War gave birth to a stream of heroes and heroines, many of who remain unsung. Captured here in this iconic photograph is an elite team of Russian female pilots, known as the Night Witches. In case you're wondering where the name comes from, it may have something to do with the fact that they were responsible for bombarding the Nazis by night, causing heavy damage to both troops and infrastructure. Number 1. The 1979 hijab protest. In 1979, the Iranian government introduced a law that mandated the use of the hijab by its female citizens. This sparked huge protests across the country, as the law was put into effect with serious force, and anyone caught trespassing was punished severely. The protests saw over 100,000 Iranian women marching through the streets of Tehran. Until today, it remains one of the biggest demonstrations in the nation's history. Thank you for watching this video. See you in the next one.